got to tell y'all about this thing called life. You know I got to share it. See, there's this thing called life. I got to tell y'all. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 200 of In a Good Way podcast. So we made it. Maybe I'll add the effects. I'm sure. I don't know if they're in here, but I should have looked beforehand. So I could have put. Oh wait. Oh, there we go. I don't know if you
That
could
is
see
so
that, but
cool. Love it. I can see it. I love it.
yeah. So episode 200. And I'm honored to have our returning guest, Libba Phillips. Right, she was on episode 107. So it's been a while. So 93 episodes ago, if my math is
Wow.
correct. But I'll read her bio for those of you that didn't watch that episode or aren't familiar with Libba. So Libba is an intuitive life coach. She's an angel communicator and author of 1 Month to Miracles, a 30-day guide to angelic signs, divine messages, and everyday miracles. Her spiritual awakening began during the long disappearance of her sister, a journey that led to national advocacy for vulnerable missing persons and media coverage, including features in People, Reader's Digest, and the Lifetime film Bringing Ashley Home, which I saw we spoke about in the last
Yeah.
interview. And today, Libba teaches people how to partner with angels and divine guidance so they can manifest extraordinary change through aligned decisions, courageous action, and real world impact. She is the creator of the Divine Messenger Method and speaks about spiritual discernment, divine partnerships, and navigating difficult seasons with clarity and courage. So once again, thank you so much for being here,
Thank
Libba. It's an
you.
honor.
Oh, it's so great to be back. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And last time we spoke, about your story, right? Your story with what you went through, right, with your sister as well.
Yeah.
You brought a lot of things to light that I wasn't aware of, right? How difficult it is to, even get police to start looking for someone, especially when they're an adult, to consider them a missing
Sometimes, yes.
person.
Yes.
Are you still doing that work today?
Well, I have stepped back from the advocacy work, and it really has a life of its own. I do keep
Mm.
the website up because people still come from all over the world to, try to get some help and get the steps that they need in order to get their loved one listed. But I think it's now where my guides have really been working with me is to help other people learn that we're all being helped, but sometimes we're the ones, this is how help happens, right? It's like people say, oh, I prayed, I'm praying for help. Where's my help? But I got good news and bad news. It's the same answer, which is sometimes the help is going to come through us, right? And that's what happened with the nonprofit journey, which is, I wanted to get my sister back. And all the steps that we took to try to get law enforcement to file a report and all of those things. It took 4 or 5 years for that to even happen.
Mm.
And and what was going on during that time was, as I was dealing with my own devastation over the injustice of it all, I was also being shown what was actually happening on the streets to vulnerable people. So, when I say vulnerable people, for those who don't know the story, I'm talking about people who are lost among the homeless. I'm talking about runaways. I'm talking about people that may be estranged from their family for whatever reason. They might be dealing with mental illness or addiction. And what I learned in that season was that, you know, it's kind of like if you think of the oldest law of the jungle, the lion always goes for the weakest prey, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I was being shown was this very, very dark reality of exploitation. And, it could have made me crumble. It did a little bit inside, but what I came to understand over time was that as my own awakening was opening, and I learned I was being guided, because I was a skeptic, even though I'd always been intuitive. I was really a skeptic as to how does divine guidance really work in real life. I was not a churchgoer. I was not somebody that actively had a dialogue ongoing every day with my angels. And so as I was being guided, I was learning that hey, there's something going on in the world. It's really dark, and I felt helpless about it, but I kept hearing create something, right? It filled the void.
Mm.
And so So bringing that back to current day is, I did that work for almost 25 years where I worked advocacy. I helped people learn how to file a missing persons report, how to pay attention to the homeless population, how to actually become awake to the difficulties in our world. And I think that's what's happening today. People are telling me, I'm hearing, wow, I'm really overwhelmed by certain things going on in the news, right? I'm overwhelmed by learning things I'm learning in the headlines. And it is devastating to learn that when you're not aware. But when you become aware, I found that we don't have to, how should I put this? It's not I don't condone spiritual bypassing. Okay, so what I mean by that is I don't condone, oh, it's all love and light, just put your head in the sand and let's move on and manifest a new car, right? You can still manifest a new car, but spirit could be asking you, and I will say honestly, I do believe spirit is asking all of us, um, we're the change we're seeking, right? So how do we know what the next step is? And I tell people, well, look at your own life first, right?
Mm,
Like, how are you being guided? Like, what's yours to do today? Maybe it's not in your life path to cure cancer or become a lawyer to, eradicate injustices of the world. But I believe that if people would learn how to get steady enough, even in difficult times, that's a lesson that can be taken from my own journey. Um, then we'll hear what's ours to do. It's like, the story, but in those early days of searching for my sister, weeks turned into months, turned into years. So it wasn't like angels threw rose petals and
mm,
made a path for me and I'd say, hey, go here, turn left. It was more like learning how to read the signs. And what I have come to understand now is that there are all kinds of signs, right? We can get signs of reassurance, like, I'm sure when you get a sign from your brother, you know that it's him, right? And that's, hey, I'm here. I'm with you. I understand. I know what you're going through. I just want you to know I'm watching over you. And the same can be said for receiving a sign of what I would call a directional sign. And that's what happened to me in those days. And this is how I know this, as to one way we can try to navigate dumpster fires that we're seeing all over the planet is being guided to take action of some kind. So it doesn't have to be this big fireworks thing, right? It can be something that's very intentional,
mm,
right? Right. And so I will give you an example of that. The first sign that I received, of reassurance was I was questioning everything in those days when strange things started happening to me. My grandfather had prayed over me, then he died. And I was like, well, great. God is, to me was like a frenemy. I was like, I'm not really
mm.
sure you exist, but if you do, I need you to show me. And I asked, hey, does my sister Ashley even matter to you? Because right now I can't get on the news, can't do any of the things that you would think you could do. So you have a missing person. And that's when I was sitting at a stoplight and a giant semi truck came right through the intersection and it said ASHLEY in bold letters on the truck.
Wow.
Now, to me, in those days, because I was such a skeptic, that got my attention, right? So sometimes that's how we are going to get that sign. I will tell people if you ask for a sign, you'll get it.
Yeah.
But being receptive, right? Be receptive. Um, and the second thing that happened around those days that let me know I was being guided to some kind of action. Um, and I have to say that, again, this wasn't me being hopeful and meditating every day because I wasn't. This was me crying in fetal
Mm,
position on the floor, begging for help, right? Already having the door slammed in my face. So I'm like, hey, God, you're my last resort. So if you're going to show me you exist, today's the day. And I can remember going down the road and saying, okay, so the truck was cool, but like I need something more. I need a sign of your sign, right? Have you ever done that? I need something more. Like I get it and I trust, but I need something more. And this was
Absolutely.
early days. So I really did need something more. And I pulled over into a parking lot of a drugstore. I was crying in those days. That was happening a lot because I still had to do daily life. I had to go to work. I had to go buy shampoo. I had to make dinner. I had to do all the things. So I went in to run an errand. And over the loudspeaker of the drugstore, I hear the opening line from a song by Train, Calling All Angels. And the first lines, without any music in the background, is I need a sign. I
Mm.
need a sign that you're here. And I'm like, okay, got my attention. And the third thing that really let me know, okay, this is something, right? And there have been many, many, many things that have happened over the course of that 25 years, but this was back in the early days, in the first couple of years, is that I said, okay, this is amazing. You're with me. Now what? Right? This is where I came to understand directional signs. I said, I need help. So I started writing it down. I said, I need help. I need to get on the news because if I can get on the news, then maybe my sister's case can be taken seriously. And if it can be taken seriously, then she could be found, right? That was the result we wanted. And I had many doors closed in my face because if you don't have your loved one who's missing listed as missing, it's very unlikely you're going to get on the news because they want to have a legitimate report. They want to have the police involved and all those things, privacy reasons, right? And I hadn't had much success with it, but I kept hearing a name. And the name I was hearing was Jennifer Smith at News 10. And the
Mm.
town I lived in at the time was in California, Sacramento. And everyone knew this woman. She was this beautiful brunette and she wore this trademark red suit. You could not miss her. If she walked into a room, you're going to pay attention, right? She just commanded that presence, right? And I kept hearing her name and I thought, wow, that'd be great, but I can get in front of her. And it would not leave me alone. And we've all had that experience where there's some intuitive something, it won't leave us alone. We don't have a logic for it. We might even say, hey, go away, that's unrealistic. But I kept listening. And I had, as I said, life was going on. I had a doctor's appointment that I had to go to. And I get in the car, I go to the appointment. I'm thinking to myself, I just need to get in here, I need to get out, need to, get on with my day. And I had really shut down because, it's like when people ask you at the grocery store or the doctor, how are you doing? You have certain days where you're like, if I really told them the truth, they, they may not want to hear me. But on that day, I decided I was going to tell the truth. And the doctor said to me, how are you doing? And I said, I'm really not doing that great. My sister's missing. I need help. Um, and I know there's probably not anything you can do, but thanks for listening. Please don't write my prescription because that's not what I need. I don't, I need actual help. Like,
Yeah.
of course, I wasn't going to tell her I was hearing, divine messengers because she might really think that I was nuts. And she said, well, what is it that you need? And I said, well, I need something practical. I need to get on the news. And I gave her the whole thing. Sister's not listed as missing. Police are not helping. This really closes the door for us. And this is back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, we're not on Facebook. There's not, volunteers rushing forward for a candlelight vigil. There's,
Mm.
it's me and my parents. I'm making many trips back to Florida. We're posting homemade flyers on the telephone poles, like looking for a lost dog.
Mm.
That's what it was like. It was going into homeless shelters and going into morgues and making these phone calls, where people really couldn't tell us a lot. But I was learning a lot, and it was devastating, the realities that I was learning about. And she said, "Well, like, who do you want to get on the news with?" And I said, "Well, Jennifer Smith, of course, right? Because everybody knows who that is in town."
Mm.
So she takes her glasses, and she says like this, she looks at me and she goes, she pulls them down on her nose and she goes, well, you might not believe this. She goes, but look, Jennifer Smith is my best friend.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? And I started feeling this emotion rising in me, like hope. I hadn't felt that in a while. And she said, yeah, listen, I can't promise anything, okay? But if it's okay with you, I'm going to give her your phone number when you leave today. And again, I can't promise anything, but I'm just going to try to do something. Okay. And I'm thinking, okay, so I leave after the appointment is over. I leave, I get into the elevator, I go down to the first floor of the building, and I get outside. I'm in my, car. I'm in the parking lot, and I'm start crying. I'm speaking to my frenemy, and I say, hey, like, don't dangle this carrot in front of me, okay, dude? Like, if this is legit, I need to know. Like, this feels really, really like something, you know? And truly. So I pull out of the parking lot. I get onto the frontage road to get onto the highway. Within seconds, this giant city bus comes right next to me. You know how buses are generally have like a wrap on them, and it's the big, beautiful face of Jennifer Smith of News 10 in a red suit. I'm going, oh, so I have to pull back off the road. I'm crying again. And
I,
at this point, I'm like, I'm ugly crying. And I say, okay, I hear you. Like I get the goosebumps even still telling this
yeah.
after all these years. Okay. And I hear, just be ready. Just be ready. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm looking ready right now. So I get home, I check my voicemail, and you know who was on the news that weekend.
Wow.
So that's what that's where I am today. Is I'm sharing the story, um, not because it's dramatic and all of that, but because I want people to know that we are always helped. Sometimes we're how, you know, it's that sort of that good news, bad news. We're the ones also showing up as help in the world, but not always. But we're always help though, and that's the part where that opened the door, right? I said earlier what my intention was in those days was I wanted my sister back. That's what I wanted,
Mm.
right? I didn't get that, right? What I got was I got a little bit of an opening into a door, a little bit of a platform to share with other people about my sister's case. And then over time, it became features I could have never dreamed of, right? Like People Magazine and Reader's Digest, and ultimately the Lifetime movie. And I think that what's important about that, and that's just what I would say to people today, is if 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 we're going to hear the guidance in our lives that I absolutely always believe is happening, we have to learn to get quiet enough to listen. And I've had people say to me, there is no way in hell I can meditate right now, right? Like I'm exhausted, I'm doom scrolling, I'm worried, what's going to happen to the economy? Am I going to have a place to live? I'm worried about loved ones, you know, um, you know, being taken from their homes. I'm worried, right? There's so much for us to worry about right now. Truly, there is. And I say, I get that. And let's just acknowledge that because that's the reality. This is, you know, to not spiritually bypass something, to be in the world and to acknowledge that the darkness is there. And also at the same time to go, okay, yeah, there's dumpster fires everywhere I look. What can I really do about it? Well, I tell people it's our job to carry water. And what that means is um, simple things that we're not necessarily thinking of. It's first of all, it's like when you're on an airplane and they say, put the mask on yourself first, right? Before you put it on the person next to you.
Mm.
It's like that in life, I think, right now, where for me, this is why Tai Chi had to become my non-negotiable. I had to find something that was going to allow me to cultivate and continue my connection to the heavenly realm and stay grounded on planet Earth so that I can carry water symbolically for my family, for clients, for however God might direct me that day. Like maybe showing up right now means really being kind to people because there's a lot of fear out there. And also, it's finding out what can I do in my own community. Maybe it's teaching yoga class like you're doing, because that's helping people cultivate their light and being grounded. And from that place, we will make better decisions in our personal lives, right? We'll make, we'll get inspiration for, hey, how can I spread more of this goodness in the world, right? Because that is what it's going to take, right? And there's plenty of people out there that are not awake. That's okay. We need to stay in our own lane. And when if they start to veer into our lane, then maybe they want a little bit of something that we might have to offer, right? And I would like to tell people, and I did tell somebody this last week. They got a little bit mad at me, but I said, hey, this is they're like, when is this ship going to stop? And I said, well, listen, I can't like gaze in my crystal ball and give anybody a date. Okay, I don't know anybody that can do that, but what I will say is that this is a marathon, not a sprint, right? So going through the seasons that I went through with my family and my sister, that was over time. That was like 25-year period, right? Sometimes we knew where she was, sometimes we didn't know. Sometimes she was being held by very unpleasant people. Sometimes she was staying with a good Samaritan. Sometimes it was, there was so many different variables, and all of them were scary because, when you have a vulnerable person that you love who's struggling with mental illness and they're a woman on the streets, you can imagine the outcomes.
Hmm.
And so if I had, I don't want to use this phrase lightly, okay, because I absolutely understand that we all go through really devastating things in life. Um, but if I had given in to the despair completely, which meant I couldn't function, right? I, somehow just stopped, existing in a way that was useful or helpful to the people that loved me, then I could not, um, I couldn't have made it through, right? And I couldn't have just shown up in the way that I believe that I'm intended to, right? So that's what I would tell people that, somebody laughed at this, but this is really true. I really did this. I received tickets for a Bee Gees tribute band last weekend. Okay. And I went and I had so much fun. And it was ridiculous. And people in that room, probably the oldest person was in their 90s. The youngest person was my daughter, who's 17. And these guys had so much joy. And for 90 minutes, this whole room was focused on that joy. And I thought, wow, I danced and, we were all doing like disco. And I also cried because I thought I would love to leave this place, leave that auditorium, get back in my car and go home and know everything's going to be okay. I'm going to look on my phone. Wars are over. Things have changed, right? It doesn't work like that. But I tell people, it's finding ways to bring back balance in your life. And that's going to look different right now. It does look different, and there were days back in the searching years, I couldn't celebrate holidays. I couldn't, um, I couldn't have gone to a concert. I couldn't even go sit through a movie. Like if I met with a friend for coffee, it was me unloading on them. Those things are normal, and I'm not saying they aren't. Um, but if I could encourage one person to say, listen, I understand right now it's hard sometimes to find your motivation when you are feeling the weight of the world, especially for empathic people and sensitive people who are awake to the nonsense that's going on. And they might go, gosh, how can I even justify, selling embroidered rabbits? I'm just making this up. I'm like, listen, that's an act of spiritual courage, okay? Because when you're contributing your light to the planet by doing something that's bringing you joy, or you're doing it in service, in a place of love, like you're doing your podcast, you're teaching yoga, the spiritual work that you bring to the world through your music, these things matter, and they shift the vibration. And that's another thing that just going to that concert. You know, it absolutely shifted my vibration. And there was an issue as a family that we were dealing with before we went to this concert. When we left, there had been some movement on that.
Mm.
And I tell people now, I say, listen, there's something to this. Like if I hear someone say, oh, you got to shift your vibe, I'm thinking, okay, that's amazing. And it is true. Um, I tend to listen to people who have actually done that in difficult times, because that's going to be the real test. And it may be for anyone who's ever dealt with, let's say, a divorce or a chronic illness or the loss of someone they love. Sometimes it's about getting through the next hour,
Mm.
right? It's getting through the next day, right? It's a day at a time, right? In recovery. And so I think that this time on planet Earth is like that, you know,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Are we showing up each day? How are we showing up each day? It's okay if we wake up, we're in a terrible mood. Show up anyway. What are the things that you can do? I mean, and I write it down. I say, okay, did I do my Tai Chi? I really didn't feel good. But I'm like, okay, nobody's watching me. I'm not making a YouTube video out of it. I'm just going to show up and I'm going to do it. And any other energy work that I know that will help me. So for me, it's like I'm a crazy cat lady. I have 3 cats. So I'm going to spend a little time, in that realm of giving and receiving unconditional love and doing anything that I possibly can instead of, oh, I give up. What's the point? Right? Because as I said, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And the way that we will change the world is by showing up fully and authentically, right? And if we can encourage somebody else and bring them with us, you know.
Ab-
And
Absolutely.
it's true. It's not me being like flippant when I say this, but I learned this from someone else many, many years ago. And I was giving sort of a laundry list of all the difficult things that I was facing. And he said to me, well, this is just what it looks like while it's working itself out, right? And I have borrowed that and shared it. And I say, that's right, this is what it looks like, you know. And I would love to tell you that one day we're going to wake up and we're going to see this magical unicorn at our front door that's going to be handing out rainbows and say, okay, life is great. Let's go get it. But instead, it's showing up on the hard days. It's recognizing this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's taking care of ourselves, putting on the oxygen mask for ourselves. If we can do it for somebody else, that's amazing. And find your non-negotiable, right? Like if it's Tai Chi or journaling or walking or yoga, one something, one something that's going to keep you tethered, you know, to the earth and also receiving the guidance from the heavenly realms. That's to me, that's where the miracles are happening every day. And then we know how we can show up for people in our community and maybe in the larger, in the world.
Absolutely. It's funny that you said that because even like this past week, what today's Saturday? Today, I don't even
Today's
know.
Saturday. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah. So this past week, like I don't even know how, right? I had messed up my wrist, but it didn't make sense. So I was like, did I sleep wrong or what? It doesn't even make sense. But yeah, I just put on a wristband and my non-negotiable was like, I'm going to my yoga class. I don't care. And everything is like on your wrist. But when I walked
Yeah,
in, whoever was teaching that day, I was like, my wrist is kind of hurting, but if something's, you always see them kind of get like, but they already know. So I'm like, yeah, if anything, I'll just take it easy. Like if but yeah,
yeah,
I'd be doing it and it's like the pain would go away while I was doing it. And then after when I'm driving, I'm already feeling it just moving the steering wheel. But while I was in the yoga class, not to say everyone to do that, but it helped me.
sure.
Yeah, it helped me stay grounded. And I even had this amazing experience just to show, because I can't say that I had ever had that happen that exact. But
Hmm.
I don't know why. As I pulled up, so I was meant to go also, because as I pulled up, I parked next to someone, and I happened to just because I know I had seen her before, like in a sound bath or different things like that, right? So I already know she takes, it's not just yoga, she also kind of is into a little more spiritual
Yeah.
things, right? And so I was like, oh, did you dream anything interesting? And then she's like, as a matter of fact, I did. And I was like, what? When she starts telling me, I was like, that's where I was last night. And she was like, what? And and she's trying to like find, nah, it's impossible. Like, were you here or how did it? And she's, oh, see, no, mine's kind of look like this. And I was like, oh, okay. And then after I remembered, I was like, well, actually, I was this. And then I walked through this thing that looked like this and this. And she's, oh, yeah, that's what I walked through too and everything. And then, so, yeah, she was just like, she was like, okay, next time I'm going to ask like for specific, like she still wanted, for me, I was already like, wow, we were in the same place in the dream. Like, and it was this place
Yeah.
with so many people, just tons of people, right? But it was funny. I felt like, wow, messed up wrist and everything. I was meant to go
Yeah.
there, right? And that's how connected. Like this morning, before we, well,
Yeah.
the image I was getting this morning. It's funny how you were talking about chop wood and carry water. Cause, oh,
Mhm.
wow, one of the instructors at the yoga studio too, she would always say chop wood and carry water, chop wood and, because I even went through this whole spiritual journey last year, and it even kept going into the beginning of this year, which it finally feels like that whole journey, it lasted over a year, was very a very like interesting journey, right? Yeah, just yeah, it was like a huge journey, right? Especially that lasting over a year. And so, I was telling her that I was like, hi, yeah, and then she's like, wow, chop wood and carry water, like that's kind of what it, like we could go through all that, but at the end of the day,
That's
yeah,
right.
like you
That's
get
right.
back, yeah, this is the, after you go through a whole journey and whatever, then it's just back to the basics, right? Chop wood and carry water. But you got that knowledge that you have now, right? And
Yeah.
this morning I had a visual of someone carrying like two pails and going up to them and being like, "Oh, let me help you with that." Yeah, yeah. So out of all things this morning, that's the visual I got. I got someone carrying, and as humans here, right, in this having this earth experience, like it's really that simple, right? Like if someone's carrying two pails and you're walking, why can't you ask them like, "Oh, you want me to help you?" You're not carrying the whole load for them, but you're like
Right.
offering to carry
Right.
at least one of those pails. You know what I mean? Like,
To show you this, because that's what I wrote down. I wrote that, we are asked to carry water, like right
wow.
now,
Mm,
right? So that's, you know, it's a mind blowing thing, how connected, and that's guidance.
mm,
So how can we, we're what, 3,000 miles apart from each other,
mhm.
right? And have this, it's frequency, right? It's the language of the divine that's coming through, giving you that information in a dream, in a vision, in a conversation with someone that you see after yoga. It's our conversation. It's all kinds of amazing things that happen, and it's the extraordinary and everyday. It's not just during the one moment when we have like sort of this mind blowing thing. It's if we are paying attention to that, and you
Yeah.
definitely are. You're definitely dialed into it, and it's so amazing. It's also very reassuring, I think, because the more awake and aware we are, and you're we're offering our help to people, even if we don't really know the how to in that day. We're just showing up, right? And if we do ask, what's mine to do today, right? I just know I have to show up to this yoga class, right? That's what even though I've got this injury, I've got to show up. And if you hadn't have shown up, you'd miss the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that was something so important in that exchange for you and the other person. And then it has this amazing ripple effect that goes out. We can't even measure it because we don't even know.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do want to get into, because we were gonna talk about how can people practice this like in real time, right? About about the divine guidance, right? So someone
Yeah,
can learn how to, even though we kind of already talked about it, but I wanted to share with you this story
yeah.
that I found was really interesting. And even that, when I was watching our first interview, and I got really emotional for some reason. Maybe just that, right? There's a lot of relation with I know your journey with your sister. I had my journey with my brother.
Mm.
Today is actually funny that you picked, because we're supposed to do the interview on a
I
different day, and then
know.
we ended up doing it today. And
Yep,
last time too, there was a synchronicity. I know it wasn't
yep.
on the date, but I ended up telling you, like, I even wrote the book like 216, and a book that you were in was published on 216. Like, so it was funny, like, after you
Hmm.
told me, oh, I have this book where you talked about or there's a chapter, right, about you and your daughter,
Yeah,
right, and her
yeah,
being
yeah,
already in tune, like young, or being born that way, right? And it
yeah.
was funny after I told you, I was like, wow, like the book was published on,
That's
the
crazy.
yeah, but today, because he was in the military, it took a few days. But today, 3/7 is actually the day that we laid his body to rest, right? Yeah, yeah. So it's funny that today, because we weren't gonna do it till. So there's again that synchronicity. I know last time there was a lot of synchronicity, like with, your sister, my brother, and then so
Well,
here it is again. So it's pretty
well,
interesting.
I'm going to tell you something else because I wasn't going to say anything, but I was going to bring it up
Oh,
now because you tell me this, and I'll probably cry. So, on during the years that my sister was missing, you know that she had a baby, and I keep
mm,
certain details of the story private to protect people. But today is her birthday. She's
wow,
23 years old. Okay, so that's something. And ah, and I have another sibling who is also giving birth to her first child today. So,
wow,
and I know that my sister in heaven, Ashley's having a lot to do with it because, I'm like, wow, because we were all trying to guess the birthday. And just last week, my youngest sister said to me, "When do you think the baby's going to come?" And I said, "Oh, I think March 6th, maybe March 7th." And actually, her water broke last night, March 6th,
wow.
and she's in the process of being in labor, like right now as we speak. And I said, I know that my other sister's watching over her today because she herself gave birth to her child 23 years ago today. And, I just think there's another synchronicity for you. Just again, that exchange. And, you know, I felt it then that your brother and my sister definitely had some connection, some conversation, some, they had, they're just trying to make sure people are connecting the dots, right? And I think that that's so extraordinary, that today is such an important date for you, and it's an important date for me and my own family. And I was very emotional this morning, thinking about there's so much joy, even in the middle of things that are really painful, things that are a loss, right? But a very dear friend once told me this, and at the time I really couldn't receive it, but I definitely receive it now. She said to me, any kind of really big loss, right? Like heart loss, soul loss, sibling loss, we lose a child or just something devastating. It increases our capacity for loving.
Mm.
And at the time, I was like, uh, yeah, if I saw that on a bumper sticker back then, I would have said, yeah, whatever. Right. But now, now, having been seasoned in all of this amazing journey that is painful and hard won wisdom, right? That's part of your story too, is the hard won wisdom, the spiritual knowledge, the the eyes behind the eyes. You may not have had that had you not seen and felt and embraced all of it, because what choice did you have,
Mm.
right? And so I think that that's if we can understand that, knowing that it's we can have both, right? We can have the really hard, difficult season and the micro joys as well, and the amazing acknowledging these amazing synchronicities, which is I would file that under divine guidance for sure. It lets us know there's a rhythm. We may not have the whole picture, but we certainly are guided and can be guided to our next step. And when things like this happen, at least for me, it's sort of like, aha, it's like, okay, I'm on the right track, right? It's a way of anchoring myself in the moment, saying something more is happening here. I just get to be a part of it. And that helps me sort of rest in that, even when the dumpster fires are happening, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And something, it's interesting because I don't know if that ever happens to you, but recently it's like things have been taking me to remember things from the past because yeah, obviously from that experience we learned that's how we help others, right? Through these experiences. But even that, like something took me even to because it's so far removed now. Imagine when would I have imagined I was gonna one day become a yoga instructor or this or that. And I was watching a movie and it was like boom, it took me all the way back to yeah. It was a movie based on a true story about kids, right? And the kids in the streets and this and that and I was like, wow, it reminded me that I was that at one point and it's been so far removed now that I forget I forget that, right? And the same, I got emotional watching that because I was like, wow, yeah, um all those choices were something I'm sure was looking out for me, right? But I know I made the choice as well, right? And
Yeah,
to get to this point,
yeah.
right? Even once I remember a friend's coming to pick me up in a stolen car and me just something trusting, even then not knowing, like, nah, I'm okay, and then the cops come and right, and they still hit me like boom, and I wasn't even in the car. I didn't get arrested because I wasn't. They just came to but even that, right there, I would have started a journey of right maybe um having a record, getting going, and then things
Yeah,
would have spiraled
yeah,
and boom, 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 or,
yeah.
or this thing. Just every time there, it was already since then, right? When we're young, we're probably um not made aware of that, right? But I think
Hmm.
right now, right at the time of the internet, we could share these stories and people could see that yeah, it doesn't happen. It starts since even you're young. Something's
Yeah,
already communicating with you. Something's already
yeah,
trying to guide you in the
uh-huh,
right way, right?
definitely. This reminds me of, when we're talking about divine guidance and how people can actually do that right now. It's going back. Let's say, and I keep this all the time. I have an index card. It's one of the supersized ones, and I encourage people to go back 10 years. So hey, you could go even back all the way back to your childhood if you really want to. If you really want to see that there's been guidance in your life, whether you believed in it or not, whether you were on the fast track to a completely different reality. And and I call these my God of the 11th hour moments, right?
Mm,
When I go back and I make bullet point list of at least 10 times in my life when I was in a difficult situation, whether it was health or a relationship or money or whatever it was, and I had a need, I had something going on, and maybe I prayed for it, maybe I didn't, but I looked and see how did that work out, and I write it out because for me, having that on a piece of paper, it allows me to look for the evidence. That's the first thing, because people will say to me, "Well, I don't hear angels like you do." And I say, well, actually, um, that's not true. We all have the ability to hear and see and know, right? Just because someone, might hear it as, Omar, turn left, somebody else is going to get an intuitive knowing that says, hey, don't go when the light turns green,
mm,
right? And so the more we practice, if we go back, first of all, go back and go say, okay, go back to high school days, even like that moment you just described in the car. Go back to when you were a kid and go, wow, that could have worked out a million other ways wrong,
mm,
right? But it didn't. And, sometimes it's really true that thank God for unanswered prayers too, right? Like, oh, if I
Mm.
had stayed with XYZ person, wow, my life might really look like a train wreck right now, right? So, so, but it's things like that. And it's even, like when I was about to give birth to my daughter, I heard, go to the hospital now, and I had a different experience. I wanted to have a natural birth and the water. I don't know. I just thought I was going to, I don't know why. I thought that was going to be a great idea,
Mm.
but it wasn't. And I knew, and the midwife was telling me, get back in the water. You're scaring the other moms. You're making too much noise. And I said, no, something's wrong. I'm going to the hospital. My husband's looking at me like, what are we doing? I said, you're getting me in the car. We're going to the hospital. And when we got to the hospital, the midwife is chasing us in there. She's apologizing for me for making a scene. And I say, girl, get back. And
Mm.
the doctor comes and they start to take all the vitals. And I say, I want a C-section. And again, the midwife's going, no, you're just nervous. You're scared. You're scared. And I said, nope, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. So they took all the vitals and everything. And the doctor looked at me and she said, if you had waited 5 minutes, she said, your child's heart rate is decelerating.
Mm.
And they learned that Izzy was stuck at her collarbone. And we ended up having an emergency C-section. And of
Mm.
course, she lived. She's in
Mm.
the Baby's Our Cosmic book. But I'm
Oh.
just saying to you, like, sometimes we talk ourselves out of things, but like that's not, believe me, that's on my index card. Okay. So it's not just when we start paying attention, we become guided. We've always been guided. We just maybe weren't paying attention or we didn't know how to ask. We can become more, what's the word I'm looking for? Discerning about, well, what is guidance? How can I hear it more? And it's being willing, right? Like there's no doubt that you're willing to be guided, right? And I
Mm.
think that a lot of other people in our world community are going to come to that understanding, um, even if they come as a last resort, right? Because they might just throw up their hands and go, God, if you're real, right? Other people might ask, where is God in the midst of all this? And I say, well, that just may be an invitation for you to challenge your perception of what you believe the creator is, right? Like I noticed you had a glass of water on your desk.
Mm.
If you and I had a group of people and they were all colors and all cultures, and each one of us was a different cup, right? But you took that cup of water and you started to pour a little bit of water into each cup, right? Each bit of that water, for the water is like our creator.
Mm.
We're each a little cup of that, right? So if we all poured our water back in there, regardless of what color or creed or culture we're from, back into that single cup of water, it's all the same thing, right?
Mm.
So some people are not resonating with that, and that's going to be a tough lesson for them. But we're planet Earth. This is kind of the school of hard knocks, right? So I think that becoming aware and being willing to acknowledge there's something more. And I would say to people that are looking for, where do I start with this whole divine guidance thing? I would say, if you let's just pick something. You have something difficult you're dealing with. Maybe I'll just make something up. Maybe somebody's wanting to get a job, right? And they say, hey, I'm really concerned. I need to get a job. Like I need a job right now. I would say, okay, first of all, are you willing to believe that you can insert any name you want, God, the creator, the manager, whatever, don't care. um, is I'm willing to believe that, God or my creator is bigger than XYZ situation, the fact that I
Mm.
don't have a job and I need a job. And I am willing to be guided. Just write it on a piece of paper.
Mm.
Okay. And then start to pay attention. So do your 30-day non-negotiable. Yeah, keep doing it past 30 days, but 30 days is a good time frame for getting in a habit. So maybe that's your yoga, or that's the Tai Chi, or it's, hey, I can't sit on a mountaintop and meditate right now, but I could listen to, music for 30 minutes and take a
Mm.
walk. So find that pocket of peace, because that's going to clear out the cobwebs. Okay. And then stay open. Start noticing what you're noticing, right? So like you. you're like, I know this. Hey, I got this wrist thing, but I'm going to my yoga class no matter what. I'm supposed to be there. And then you connected with someone, and then you had this sort of mind blowing experience, right? And it's like, okay, write that down, right? And then it's not just waiting for the manifesting fairy to bring you a basket of magical wishes to your front door, right? It's it's yes, getting clear on what it is you want for the job, but it's also taking practical action, and it's listening for the divine direction. So maybe the divine direction comes in. I'll use your friend as an example. Maybe it's this friend that comes into your awareness that you haven't spoken to very much before, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, what do you need? Like the doctor in my story. And the other person says,
Mm.
well, I'm looking for a job. Oh, what kind of job are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for a job doing blah, 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 blah. Oh, you should talk to my friend Tim, right? And that's how that happens. And when these things happen, we write them down, okay? Because when we write things down, then we can start to strengthen that discernment, right? We can go, oh, was that fanciful thinking? Was it magical thinking? Or was that real guidance? And the more we can start to separate, right? The wheat from the chaff, we start to go, okay, that was interesting. Like if I had not, the whole thing with Jennifer Smith, I'm like, that intention was so clear in my mind that I needed her, but I didn't think I was going to get it. And I just said, okay, well, and you know the story. And then I'm seeing the signs, and then the action happened. And then I said yes to being on the news that weekend. So it's things like that. And I think that these things are always happening, right? Like the connections, just like what happened with your friend, the connections are happening, the meaningful coincidence, the meaning of today's date with your brother being laid to rest and new life coming onto the planet, and the importance of
Wow.
this date, right? I'm getting the goosebumps, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
80 degrees already here in Tampa this morning. So
Wow.
I'm saying that, there are, um, we can do it in a journal. You know, I wrote a guided journal. It's 1 month to miracles. I want to share it right now. It's
Beautiful.
a 30-day experience for people to um, start to ask for signs and record them. Like, there's no wrong answers. Write down what you get. This is the only way you're going to get better at receiving the information. It's not that you can't receive it. It's be willing and know that it's your birthright.
Mm,
You don't have to be psychic or guru or talk to angels, right? It's you're a cup of the creator. So
mm.
therefore you have the same I am abilities, true? And some
Absolutely.
people aren't there, but if they begin to be consistent in their results, just like with a yoga practice, if they're consistent in their yoga practice, they return to their life every day, chop wood, carry water, but they also begin to see other areas of their life soften. They see their frequency change. They begin to acknowledge the synchronicities around them. And then maybe by Friday, they wake up and they go, holy cow, we're living in this miraculous exchange that's happening all the time. I wonder if it would work for this, right? And you just start
Mm,
writing these things down. And this is how um, over time, this is how the angelic realm let me know that, for me, there was a framework that was happening, right? It's not sort of this magic, formula that works on all things, but it's for me, I'm a person that really likes information. I like sort of give me directions, right?
mm,
I can rely on my GPS, on my phone, but what if we don't have power, right?
mm,
So we don't have to, but we can choose to strengthen that connection. Our intuition is our compass,
mm.
and our intuition, I believe, is our creator speaking to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Let me ask you this. I mean, I know it doesn't matter, or at least maybe not to me, so I don't want to speak for anybody else. But let's say someone, for
right,
example, is like, well, I don't believe in the whole spirit guide thing, so I only want to talk to angels, or I
yeah.
want to talk to spirit guides because I don't believe in angels. So How do
So,
people I mean, to you obviously it wouldn't matter, right? Because you're still getting divine guidance. But let's say someone would want to like, wow, how do I know the difference? How do I know an angel's talking to me versus a spirit guide?
mm,
Is there any way for them to know?
well, I will tell you again, this is how I know. I can't speak for anyone else, but this is how I know. Is so because I did 20 plus years of advocacy work in a very difficult environment. I'll just say that. Lots of exploitation, lots of dark underground, dark web stuff, right? So without, freaking anybody out, it's just there was a lot of darkness. And
Mm,
so there's a lot of darkness in the world. And some people may call that evil. Some people may call that, demonic even. And so, I've always been intuitive, but, there were things that um, I didn't necessarily understand or didn't necessarily put into the construct of church or religion, right? Even though my grandfather was a minister, I had so much of my own family dysfunction and violence that was happening to me as a child that I just thought, gosh, if God's, in the room, he is certainly not here, right? He's
mm,
somewhere else. And so, I think that that's an important thing to acknowledge. And so when people are saying, I don't really want to talk to this or that, because for me, discernment came from walking a path that was very dark and knowing that there were things that were evil. And I think we are in a real battle for that right now. And again, I don't go to church and I'm not, not certainly not a Sunday school teacher. But for me, the way that it showed up was this guidance for myself, which is now that I would say to someone else, if you're seeking a connection, a divine dialogue, I would encourage you to pray in a way that's comfortable for you. And what I say is I ask for my God appointed guide or my God appointed angel. If someone says, well, I don't want to talk to anybody else other than Archangel Michael, I say, that's fine. Ask for Archangel Michael, you know, I didn't talk about this for a long time, but like when my daughter was little, she was like 2 or 3 years old, she began to speak in full sentences and she would say things like, oh, mommy, the lady in the blue hoodie is here. And I'm like, what lady in the blue hoodie? And she would get exasperated with me. And she'd like smack her leg and she'd say, Mom, Mother Mary. And I'm going,
oh
Mother
wow.
Mary, I'm not Catholic. My granddad, like I said, was Episcopal, but that, I'm like, I'm not Catholic. Like, why is she here? And she would say, she's on your team. Like she just sort of give me sass. Like this is coming from a 3-year-old kid who never set foot in Sunday school or never, read any religious doctrine or anything. So the things that would come out of her mouth then and even now are very, very enlightening. So I never want to tell anybody how to believe, but I would just
Mm,
say, what feels true for you? If you're wanting to get the most clear guidance, it will require a little bit of a trust fall on your part, right? It
mm,
will require you to show up and do the work. And in order to get guidance that is clear, it will matter that you're doing it also with intent. And guidance is not going to come through with anything that's like really fearful, right? Or urgent, like unless it's you're about to, if you don't get to the hospital now, you're going to, there's going to be a problem, right?
mm,
Is what happened to me. But it wasn't sort of this, scary thing. It was more a knowing, like or that feeling of, hey, when the light turns red, you need to wait a half second before you
mm,
go because this motorcycle's going to come run through the red light and it's taking sometimes what looks like a brave action, right? It's like, okay, I need that job. So I really don't want to call Tim because we haven't spoken in a couple of years and it'll be weird. It's do it anyway, right? It's not about doing things that are reckless. It's not about doing things that are really impulsive, like I want to be a dancer with the New York City Ballet. And I'm like, oh, have you ever taken any dance lessons? Right? It's about getting really clear on what's your intention. What are you asking? What's mine to do today? Or what do I need to know to get that job? Well, you got a clear resume. Have you got a LinkedIn profile? Right? Call Tim. Right? You get what I'm saying?
mm,
And I think it's taking action in ways that when you write it down, you will start to see, oh, something happened there, right? Maybe I got reassurance signs, like, hey, I see you. Or I got directional signs, call 10, right? And over time, we learn what feels comfortable for us. And some people don't want to use the word God. That's fine. I use it because that's just what comes to me naturally. But I also like creator. I like the
Mm.
manager. And, Jesus I'm very comfortable using that name. Um, but I really don't care if someone doesn't believe in that or not. But I think that having the discernment and asking for that very clear guidance, I would say that's another non-negotiable, at least as far as I'm concerned, you know?
Absolutely. No, no. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope anyone
Yeah.
listening to this um gets, or at least tries it. At least is willing to try
Yeah.
it because
Yeah.
like you said,
Yeah.
that's, are you willing? Are you,
Are you
and
willing?
I think, yeah, and that's the first step, absolutely, because I
Yeah.
do see it, right? That there's a lot of people that aren't willing, or at least that I've came across, right? That aren't.
Well, sure, sure. And I would say too, maybe there's people out there that have had a similar experience to me as a child. They grew up in an abusive home. They didn't have reliable adults that they could count on. They spent most of their time in fight or flight, right? And there was a lot of time I was trying to protect my younger sister from, the person that we live with. And, I just really did not have that. I wasn't raised as that kid that would just sort of say their prayers at night and really believed in them. I wasn't raised to feel like everything's going to be okay, God's watching over you, and you're this precious child of God. No, none of that. So my journey, was very difficult. I mean, for me, meeting God was in a dark alley, right?
Mm,
Talking to, prostitutes and trying to protect myself from people that were very dangerous for me to be talking to. Um, there's a lot of there's a lot of negativity and a lot of really bad people in the world that want to take advantage of other people. And so I think that, when we are coming to something with a healthy sense of skepticism, that's totally fine. This is a journey that is so personal to each person.
mm,
But taking those steps to say, okay, I'm willing to believe. Maybe it's because they've listened to you or they've had a conversation with you where they're like, well, Omar believes this. Maybe they can borrow on your believing to go, that he did this thing this way and something worked out really well for him. Or, they happen to need some help. They came to yoga, just they might not use the words I felt guided to come, but because they like you and they trust you, they came, and doing yoga maybe changed their whole life and their whole
mm,
attitude. They started to realize this is part of my healthy toolbox to manage depression and get my blood pressure under control. I'm just making this up, but I think these things are very real. We have very real, tangible outcomes, and to me, that speaks to the evidence of all of this being real.
absolutely. No, no. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, no, that's beautiful. So what else? So you just released your book recently. Are there
Mhm.
any other things that you have right now that like you're still doing your like coaching and helping?
Yep. Yep. I'm helping people to navigate and understand. I guess the best way to describe my work would be that I teach people how to have divine partnership
Mm,
with angels or the unseen realm, in order to make meaningful changes in their lives. So maybe they do just want to manifest a new car, or they don't necessarily want to manifest world peace. That's fine. But, I think that, especially right now, if all of us are on the planet right now, anybody that's on the planet right now, um, you're supposed to be here.
mm,
There's purpose in you being here, whether it's, you know, raising young children or being part of future politics or, you know, looking for healthier ways for people to manage stress. And I think it's an exciting time. It's also a challenging time for people to be here. And so I'm just one set of hands that I think is helping people, to bring themselves to a fuller authenticity and find that they have a real reason to be here and have the life that they imagine. It may not be the life that they thought they wanted, right? Like I said, I wanted my sister back. I didn't know that it was
Mm.
going to take me through advocacy and then eventually to become a spiritual teacher. But when I look at it now and I look back, the signs were always there. I was
Mm.
being guided from the time, like you, like the time I was a little kid. You know, we are all uniquely equipped to be here at this time. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, no, that's beautiful. Well, yeah, I mean, I want to be respectful of your time. So if there's anything else you want to share, if not, we could start
Yeah. No, I just would, I'm so thankful to be here. And if anyone would love to come learn more, I'd invite them to my website. It's libbaphillips.com. Certainly, you can find my book. It's on Amazon. Um, it's part of that 30 days, and I think in 30 days is a really great time. The feedback that I'm getting from people is a really amazing time for people to start to go, wow, there's something to this. Um,
absolutely. Yeah, and I'll put all the links to the book. I'll put a link
Thank you,
to your
thank you,
website
thank
underneath
you.
and everything. Yeah, no, but you have so much like so much knowledge, right? So much wisdom that I know you've gained from
Yeah.
experience and and it shows, right? Like I know there's different ways to learn. There is no right or wrong way,
Oh, no.
but I have personally, then I could at least say that personally, I have always been drawn to those that you can tell they learn from experience as opposed to,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Well, and that speaks to, again, that's discernment, right? And that's when people say, I don't understand what that means. That maybe is a good thought, for people to keep in mind as they move forward is, you know, discernment's like anything else. It's a skill that you learn, and you know, it's like shaking someone's hand, right? And right away you go, oh, well,
mm,
they don't like how that feels, right? Or they hear someone speak and they want to move a little closer. They're like, I don't know why, but I really like what she's saying. Or they've not ever been successful or felt like vulnerable when they would come to yoga, but for some reason they like how you teach it and they feel
mm,
safe in that container, right? That's discernment, right? That's knowing. That's starting to um, notice what you're noticing. So that means about people, about your exchange with people. Are they living from lived experience, or is it, did they, just happen to put these teachings together and they sound really good, but did they walk their talk, right? And um, but I really think that there's something important in that noticing what we're noticing and getting to a place of acceptance. It's not comfortable. I didn't say it was comfortable
mm,
with the times that we're in right now are a marathon, right? So if there are ways in our lives that have been begging for a reset, if we haven't been paying attention, those things are going to come up, right? But we can manage. We can be guided. We can be helped. It doesn't mean guidance doesn't mean, because I've heard people say this, well, if God is real, then why is war and killing of children and all this? And I say, hey, listen, I asked the same damn question when I was on the streets looking for my sister, because believe you me, I was asking, hey, if you're real, why are you allowing this?
mm.
This is not okay with me. We are the eyes and ears of spirit, right? We're that cup of water, right? It doesn't mean we have to walk around being all saintly and nuns, right? The food is pretty good. I like the food here on planet Earth, but it's like there's things for us to experience. There's life lessons, right? There's maybe our soul contract. Maybe people don't believe in that. That's totally okay, but we're going to be given these opportunities where we will ask, maybe in the midst of the fire of our own lives, what's my life for? What am I here for? What am I supposed to do? Right. And it's not just about, you know, the millions and millions of dollars. That's amazing and great. And money is wonderful. We do need that. That's exchange on this planet. But it's so much more. And we're all part of that evolution, of humanity. Um, and it's really a wake up call, I think, that's happening right
Mm,
now on the planet. But I don't necessarily think that it's something to be in despair about. Yes, the events that are happening are difficult. They are, many of them wrong, many of them unjust, many of them painful. I think that, and I don't claim to understand it, but I do feel that, and I hear that there's a collective heartbreak happening. And in some ways, it's necessary, right? Some people are not awake to the compassion that's required to be fully human. But all of us are that divine expression, right? All of us, what is it? Wayne Dyer said, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. It's very true now. So we don't necessarily rise above the bullshit. We navigate through the bullshit, and we need bullshit for things to grow, right?
mm.
We need that. Sometimes we need the cow manure to make things grow and um, to help each other figure out this thing that's life. And we don't have to wait. It's divine guidance is not someone coming to save you. God saying, "Oh, okay, well, I'm so sorry about that. Let me just eradicate that problem over there and everything is great." It's showing you there's a divine partnership that exists. You can do something about it, even if it's just the next step, right? Even if it's just the next step to getting the job or starting a nonprofit or, you know, getting a second opinion on the medical diagnosis. And when we know that, I'm not saying guess, I'm not saying imagine, when we know who is walking with us, boy, it really takes some of the weight off,
Mm.
right? It really takes some of the weight off to go, oh, yes, I still have to pay the rent, but, right, I have help. They're angels that want to help me with that. And they're not going to necessarily bring the basket to the front door with the unicorn and all the money, but they're going to help you if you are asking and receiving, you know, they're going to help you take the next step. But we have to be willing and we have to ask.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, no, there was so many things coming through, like when as you were speaking, but I think like for example, one thing that came to mind was because when I was young, I did have all these ideas of like how to make the world a better place, and it's funny that
Mm-hmm.
kids come into this reality with that, right? And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times it's adults that start dimming that light because somehow they became disconnected, right? I don't know if it's just because when you're young, you still were closer to that other side, right? So you come in with all that, oh, when I go to Earth, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that and I'm gonna change the world. Like, it's like almost like that's why you're coming here to begin with. And so when you're young, you have these ideas, right? And then there's adults that are already bitter or angry or this, and then
Yeah,
they disconnected from that
they
light. So
forgot.
and I think maybe, I had like a light bulb moment. That's why I feel I'm being taken back so much recently because I had those ideas. Like even now, when I was young, I wanted to know why. Like there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people not willing to like, oh no, that's a bad person. Lock them up. Throw away the key. No, that's okay. But why did they become like that? What
Mm-hmm.
happened to them? And how do we stop that? Don't
Mm-hmm.
you understand that if you treat someone bad, it's gonna like it's like that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
thinking that you can go even that, right? Like drop bombs on a country and then that kid that becomes orphaned isn't gonna grow up with hate and then want to
yeah,
become a like what we call terrorists. That's how big the ripple goes, and then they're gonna train
yeah,
others and train
yeah,
others and train others, and
yeah,
this perpetuation, the
yeah,
same, right? With
yeah.
a gang, right? Like a kid, right? Something happens to him when he's little, and then so he has anger. Then he becomes a gang member, then he gets others in the gang, then others in the gang, then other, and there's so much, right? Or someone that's just gets their heart
Mhm.
broken, so they break someone's heart, and then they break someone's heart, and then they break like everything goes back. And when I was
Yeah.
little, I would follow it all the way to like, how did it happen, right? And maybe that's why,
Yeah.
right? Even with the podcast, right? I like to ask, right? I like to learn
Yeah.
about people, right? I like to see
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
always ask, like everybody when I interview them for the first time, it's like, well, when you were little, how did the spirituality start? I follow the,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? But I used to
Hmm.
follow it in the way of, I used to follow it in the way of wanting to understand. Um, I think I wanted to understand that. Yeah, I wanted to know why. Like
Yeah.
I didn't see the world as evil. I know understood that
Yeah.
people do evil things, but I felt like
Yeah.
there could be a heaven on earth. Like we didn't have to
Hmm.
wait till we go to see that heaven, right? Or
Right.
something. So,
Right. Right. And think about the opposite is also true, where if someone is learns that maybe those difficult experiences were part of their life path, they were part of what empowered them to be uniquely equipped. If I had not been abused, if I had not um, gone through what I went through with the adults in my life, maybe I wouldn't have become a voice for those who weren't seen and heard, right? With missing persons. I wouldn't have been so keen to, when I went to look for my sister, some people will say, oh, that person's just a drug addict. I'm not going to look for them. Or, they have mental illness. The police said, hey, she's crazy. If she gets caught with drugs, then she's our problem. But, she has the right to be crazy on the street. And I'm like, okay, but she's going to be exploited. She's going to be what? And if I hadn't have gone down that rabbit hole, I wouldn't have seen what I saw,
mm,
and I wouldn't have become desperate enough to ask for help, have my grandfather pray for me on his deathbed that that God would help me with a purpose. And I'm thinking, oh man, I don't even know if God's listening. You
mm,
make him look good, but I don't think whoever you're talking to is listening. There's no other way to explain the things that began to happen because my mind was a logic mind, right? I'm like, oh, people say, oh, you got to believe it to see it. And I'm like, well, I got to see it to believe it. That's how I was in those days. And that lived experience came over 25 years of time. Now I'm 58, I'm almost 60 years old. And I'm like, wow, it would have been really great to have this knowledge when I was 30 or 20, right? But that light, the light that you share, the light that I share comes in wisdom, it comes in lived experiences. That also goes out in a ripple effect, right? People are changed sometimes in a positive way because you're reflecting something back to them that
mm,
they forgot. They forgot maybe as a child, or their light was dimmed because they experienced abuse or extreme poverty or some type of hardship that just, you know, took away their power. But
mm,
really, what if the whole gig about being here is learning to, the forgetting is part of the whole deal, right? It's forgetting what we're connected to. And the rest of the deal is we're spending the rest of our days remembering that we really are. We're really that cup of water. We really are that. We have we have unseen allies, right?
mm,
That are standing by helping us. And never doubt one person can change the world. I mean, I didn't do all of that by myself, right? I didn't just, write all these letters and get into media or make this movie happen. I asked God. I said, "Hey, I'm 40. I'm pregnant. I can't go out onto the streets looking for lost people anymore. I've been making a documentary for a few years. Not sure where the money's going to come from, but I want people to understand that there's 40,000 unidentified John and Jane Does in this country. I want people to understand what's happening in the streets and why we need help for people that have mental health issues. And I don't think I can get this film done. I don't, I have a best friend that was helping me in another part of the country, and the resources weren't there. So I wrote it out. I said, if this story matters to you, then I'm gonna need some help. And 3 days later, I got a call, and they wanted to pitch it to Lifetime. And at first, I'm like, oh, Lifetime, because I still had my heart set on, oh, I want this documentary, I want this thing to happen. But because of that, it was a co-creation. And then it went and it aired in over 20 countries around the world for 10 years.
Wow. Wow.
That's not me, but that's the perception, right, of people who viewed somebody that was lost against the homeless. I don't have like measurable numbers or anything like that, but I still get messages from people who say, I watched that and now I think differently. And now I think about a woman on the streets who might be pregnant.
Mm.
I think about a teenager, right? And so there's wonderful, wonderful groups out there doing really important work right now with these vulnerable populations. So that's just one message. I'm just sharing that to say that, one person can really make a difference. I mean, you know, it's like we really are a vessel. And those things that were given to you as a child, those dreams, those ideas, the why, right? Like, why are people like that? How can I make the world a better place? Those are really great questions to be asking now,
Mm.
for people to go back and go, gosh, where did I get lost along the way? And what if all the things that I've experienced have actually been leading me to something more? It is. It's leading you to whatever the next step is, whatever that is.
Mm. Absolutely.
I
No,
believe it. I
yeah,
believe it.
yeah, yeah. No, I remember because right now you brought back a memory of like, for me, for example, I'll just share this and then I know we'll close
Yeah.
it out. But because I can't go around doing this to people, but for example, for me, one day, I was probably in my 20s and I don't know what happened, right? But my mom got mad at me and she gave me a good slap. Bam! That's probably one of like the few times
Mm,
like that. She gave me a good slap and she's like, what's wrong with you? When you were little, you were such a happy kid. And so it was
mm,
almost like my whole from past 20 years flashed before in my head. And I was like, well, yeah, I got beat up every day. I had this and that. Like,
mm,
so okay, I get it. I had guns pointed at me. So I was like, wow, okay. And then it was like,
mm.
but so I can't go around. Bam, so I mean, what happened to you? I and maybe
Right.
it's and maybe they have a life review in that second, like I did, right?
Yeah.
But that, yeah. And then I realized, like, oh wow. And then it's fun. Like I didn't fall into the victim mentality, but I did. I was like, okay, it wasn't my fault. I see now
Mhm.
what was done, and I want my happiness back. I deserve that
That's right.
happiness because if they took it from
That's
me,
right.
and I
You
want it
do.
back. And so that's what I
Yeah.
went to. I was like, you ain't gonna steal this from me. You stole it for 20
Yeah.
something years, whatever the world, right? Whether it was me getting
Right.
beat up or people pointing guns at me or this or that, whatever was
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then that became the journey, right? Like, and it is hard, right?
Yeah.
Because we've already been
Yeah.
conditioned, right? We have that
Yeah.
anger, and it still comes out every time.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know, not
Yeah.
to tell everybody like go slap someone that you see, like,
No,
but
but it is though, it speaks to the wake-up call that
mm,
we are in right now. It's the proverbial slap heard round the
mm,
world. Really? Like, it's time for people to wake up, and we can either keep shouting at the TV or at our Instagram feed or the doom scroll and say, "Wake the up," right? Or we can
yeah,
be about the business of living as authentically as we can, right? Because each one of us is a walking translator for someone else, for the divine, right?
mm,
It's, we're showing up as who we are, and um, this planet, right? Like I said, I think there's a collective heartbreak that's going on, so that we can get back to that place of compassion, to create solutions that benefit all beings, right? All humans. Um, it's not everyone will relate to, oh, it's all love and light, right? No, there's a lot of shit in between too.
mm,
And so to take back one's own power, is to choose. I'm willing to believe it is possible for me to be happy, even though I had, right? You had all these difficult experiences. And imagine how powerful it is for someone, a young person or an older person, to hear your story. They may come to yoga as a result of it. And because they came to yoga, they would hear a message. Hey, your mess is your message, right? There's something in that where
mm,
these things happen. They don't happen in a vacuum. Whether they were scripted or part of the plan, I can't really tell you with 100% accuracy. But I know that people who have experienced really difficult and challenging things do choose at some point to see the world in a different way, whether it's a jaded, bitter, angry, resentful way, or something has occurred that they are willing to look at the world from a place of compassion and ask the questions you're asking. Why are we like this? What can we do about it? What can we do about it now?
Mm,
Right? What now? And the more people who are showing up asking that question will be answered, right? And it becomes not necessarily that God's directing all of your steps and you have to do things you don't want to do, right? It's more a beautiful co-creation, right? Things that can happen that are sort of beyond what you could do on your own, right? Like that's for me when I look back, and I'm sure when you look back in your own life, you go, wow, something more was helping me.
mm,
There's no doubt. Like, I couldn't have just shown up to the doctor and gotten seen, Jennifer Smith, the whole thing, right? So um, there's a whole breaking apart sometimes that's happening in our lives when really, um, it sounds like it should be a meme, but it's not. The breakthrough, it becomes the breakdown becomes the breakthrough
mm,
eventually. And it doesn't necessarily happen overnight. Somebody had said to me, hey, it's going to take 25 years for you to get this knowledge. If someone said that to you, hey, it's going to take you a couple decades
mm.
to get to this place before you start to get your happiness back, you'd have gone, forget it. Right? I would have gone running down the street like, no, didn't sign up for this, don't want this, you know. Uh, but what's really brave is for people to be in the world, keep showing up, chop wood, carry water, help somebody else carry the water, put out the fire with the water if they can in their own homes, in their own communities, um, and be careful what you ask for because you'll get an answer. You might get an assignment that you thought I didn't sign up for this,
Mm,
right? But
mhm.
you will be equipped. You're so equipped to do the next thing. And God, or whatever you want to call it, answers prayers. My granddad always told me the answers were sometimes no,
Mm,
yes, let me work on it. Let me work on it. It's not necessarily, like I said, the basket full of, you know, money that comes to the front door, but it's the connection to the person that leads you to the job and, to the accountant and the savings and all the things that we need to do anyway to navigate on planet Earth. And then we can share that with somebody else about how that happened, and then it goes on, like you said, the ripple effects. Imagine if everybody on the planet was listening and operating from the heart.
mm.
I think that human evolution would happen a lot quicker than the timeline I've been wondering about. Yeah,
Absolutely. No, no, that's beautiful. No, I love it. Yeah. I'm hopeful. I'm very
I'm
hopeful.
hopeful. I'm hopeful too. I'm hopeful too. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and we got our allies, and we got your brother's in charge of something. My sister's in charge of something. So think of all the other, you know, our allies are not just angels, and they're not just. It's not just God. It's our loved ones,
Mm.
spirit guides, whether you believe in them or not. You know, and these kids, they're definitely seeing things that are amazing, and I just would tell people that we have allies that want to help, and we just also have to show up, and be willing be willing to be helped and be helpful.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, I don't, hopefully this isn't, but Ashley had like an interesting laugh, right? Like she had like, okay. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Because yeah, I felt her,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I felt her
Yeah.
and I heard her, if song. I love it.
Oh,
I
you give
love
me
it.
the goosebumps right now. So she
Ah,
said she yeah, so she let me tell you something about her. She wanted all eyes on her in the room.
Mm,
And boy, she would command that presence because physically very, very beautiful person, had a very loud laugh.
mm.
And nothing gave me more pleasure than to prank her, right? When we were kids, and she lived with me for a short amount of time in California. And she used to love candy and sweets and stuff. And so one night she came in very late, and I really wanted to give her shit about it. But instead, I put these plastic chocolate candies on her pillow, like they were like candies. And so she had a friend staying over too. The friend, she's like, oh, so and so's going to stay over. I'm like, okay. So I could hear the friend in the room going, oh, your sister's so sweet. She put like candies on our pillows, like a hotel. And I'm thinking, and then she goes in there to like put it in her mouth, and it's like plastic, and I'm like, I'm so thankful she didn't swallow it, but she like bite down on it, and it's not candy. So, but yeah, we would always prank each other in so many ways, and just her laugh was ridiculous and silly.
Mm.
So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I
I
love
want
it.
to
I
thank you
love
for
it.
that because that's a real gift today.
Aw. And no,
Yeah,
no, I'm thankful for that. Thank you. Yeah, she has such beautiful energy. So,
yeah,
mm.
yeah.
Oof,
The
that got me.
miracle, yeah, the miracle. I will just say this last thing is that, you know, when we learned that she had passed, it's been a couple of years now, and you might know the story, that I was guided to share some of her ashes in a sunflower field. And ever since then, she has sent me sunflowers as one of her
Mm,
signs. And this is something that I found myself surprised by, even though I do this work in teaching people divine partnership. Um, is I have an even sweeter and closer relationship with my sister today
mm,
because many of those years that she was on the streets, she had become a shell of herself, and it was such a difficult reality for her and for my family. And I see her now when I see her in my mind's eye or I hear her, I know that she has returned to that true state, right?
mm,
To that cup of water, where she is free and she is healed and she is happy and she's healthy. And she helps me. My God, does she help me?
mm,
I mean, sometimes I just laugh about it because I said, earlier in the year, I said, um, I'm asking God, I'm like, okay, so now what? Last year I heard, it's time for you to start speaking more and to go speak. And I said, okay, are you sure? And they said, oh yeah. And so I heard my sister say, oh, I'll be in charge of your PR, and I'm like,
mm.
okay, you're funny, you're funny. Anyway, it's very interesting some of the timing when you reached out to me, to come back and be a return guest on your show. Such a huge honor. And I'm just like, sometimes we think in our human minds, how are we going to do this? How are you going to do a certain thing or, make something happen but there's so much help. Like it's even um, in that realm where the big picture, we don't always see it, right? We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how a certain war is going to end or how a certain situation is going to work itself out. But I've come to realize in my own life, and certainly now at the end of Ashley's earthly life, that love doesn't know any distance.
Mm.
That's the really cool thing. And that's what I would hope people would, when they start asking for that divine guidance, whether they use the book or they put it in the journal, they can do what you do and what I do. They can communicate and ask for that sign from their loved one. They can ask for a little extra help in the job department.
Mm.
They can ask the bigger questions, what's my purpose, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's yes, like you, I wish I had kept whatever knowledge I had come onto the planet with as a little girl. Um, And it just happens now in this lifetime, that I'm have the knowledge now at
Mm.
58. I have it now, and seems like a really good time to share it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm definitely being guided in that same way. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, well,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, we could probably keep
Awesome.
going and going and going.
We could, I know.
So thank you so much, Libba, once
Oh,
again
thank
for
you.
returning and sharing. Yeah, thank you so much for your insight, wisdom, and everything that you do. Thank you. And
Oh,
yeah,
back to you.
everybody watching, thank you for tuning in. I'll put all the links so you could contact Libba underneath in the description. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Omar, for showing up the way you do. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Life may move fast, or it may move slow. I met a silly man who said he make it slow. We look up out towards space, or even at the sky. One day pass away, but never look inside. Breathe in, breathe out. Life is a maze, but we'll figure this out. I mean, human beings, I ain't got no doubt. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sometimes you just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? You just feeling it. And I wanna feel this way forever.